from the executive branch of the government, was it a mistake in that prior to us overthrowing Saddam and dismantling the Iraqi conventional military, Iran was far less of a threat,
Hmm.
I would say, especially regionally, but even globally. Is that when you look at the amount of influence and impact that Iran had on our operations in Iraq, and then now if you look at like the last 20-ish years, the entire region, especially Hezbollah and Hamas in the Palestine region, I think
And
are,
even the rise of ISIS, right?
yeah, so like it's kind of you cut one head of the snake off and three more pop up. I mean, the as big of a dick and a problem as Saddam was, he was at a minimum, keeping a lid on the extremism coming out of Iraq, at least how it's affecting, any Western interests by and large. But also he was keeping Iran busy enough, to where they didn't have the capacity in dealing with him and emboldening, supplying, supporting other terrorist factions. I
Mhm.
mean, because it's not just Hamas and Hezbollah. You got the Houthis in Yemen. I think at this point, looking in the rearview mirror, which again I know is easy to do, but it would be hard to convince me, at least, that the region is in a better place now,
Mhm.
20 years, 25 years after, having started what we started there, that it's better off now than it was before we ever stepped foot in
Yeah.
that both of those countries, especially as it relates to Iran.
You know what's interesting too is when you're in the region, like especially when you spend some time in like Eastern Jordan or those parts of Iraq, and you think that well, all these Iraqis must have hated Saddam, right? But the amount of Saddam Hussein bumper stickers and people that actually did like Saddam is far higher than I would have ever anticipated. I'm like, man, why do they like? No, they really love Saddam and all these regions. Maybe
Well,
not
I
all of
think the
Iraq.
Sunnis probably did,
Yeah.
but obviously there was a significant enough percentage of the population that liked and supported him to keep him in power. So there's that, but there's also, again, that it's just the Iran-Iraq war back in the 80s, was, some may say, a stalemate. I think you could probably argue that Iraq really had the upper hand,
Mhm.
but it was time and cost consuming for both countries
Yeah.
to a degree with which they didn't really have the bandwidth to go
Yeah.
outside of those two countries while they were engaged in decades long conflict, and by us coming in and kicking that hornet's nest over, I really think that we emboldened Iran to do a lot and far worse things regionally and even globally.
A lot more power base with the Shias, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think the biggest mistake we made, like we can debate like whether invasion or not, like was a mistake. I mean, it probably was. It going back, like looking at the documents from the CIA and whatnot that was like convince people that it needed to go in. Yeah, you could say, okay, well, they really believe that this is the right thing to do, right? But when we said, hey, no Ba'ath Party members as part of any of these government security apparatus, like that's all that was there that was proficient. So, and then now you've taken this huge population of people, and now they're going to be mad at you. And of course, they're going to resist you now because what are they going to do? They got to survive too. I think that was probably a pretty massive mistake there
Yeah.
that led to the majority of the problems that we end up having. As far
Yeah.
as I don't know what you think about that.
I agree. I think, but I think it's also, you have to be fair in that, when Iraq kicked off, it's on the heels of 9/11, which, we got caught with our pants down, got punched in the mouth, and the mind frame and mentality of the entire nation, and especially the U.S. government as it relates to the Defense Department, is that never again. So if we have to preemptively go kick people's asses just in the prospect that they might be planning to do something like this, then we're going to do it, because this shit isn't happening on our home turf again. So I think it's easy to look back now as, a lot of that sentiment has dissipated, and we're not really in that mentality the same way that we were then, and really not even close. But and I also think that, like with most things, whether it's on the micro level of on the battlefield or the macro level of, sitting in the Oval Office, and everywhere in between, is that, you do the best you can with the
Mhm.
information you have. And I do truly think that they did that. Was there maybe some confirmation bias, being the son
Absolutely, yeah.
of H.W. Bush, of not finishing business and seeing the aftermath of not going all the way in and seeing it through? Probably. You could also argue or debate, at least bring up with a questioning sense of ask, that when you have government officials, a number of them, the Secretary of Defense, the President, and a lot of high level cabinet folks, as well as freshly retired generals who are now on boards of directors of a lot of these big government contracting companies, whether it's Raytheon, Halliburton, Boeing, McDonnell Douglas, whatever. And all of these people have high vested interests in these companies that stand to make a fuckload of money
Mhm.
if we go into a multi-decades long two-front war. I don't think you can just ignore that.
Mhm.
So I think there obviously are a lot of components, a lot of intricacies, and things that aren't necessarily easy answers. And again, it's a lot easier to sit here now and point out the mistakes. But I do think Iraq generally was a mistake, foreign policy wise, because of all the things that happened. Not just the way that we did it, but I think even just doing it, looking at it now, and that, whether you want to call it a Machiavellian approach of saying the end justifies the means, and just looking at the end result and saying, was it worth it? Even if you simplify it or reduce it to that level, I think it's easy to say, I don't think it was. I don't think Iraq is in a better place now than they were, on February of 2003.
Yeah.